Old man got the tractor beam out of commission, or this is gonna be a real short trip. Okay, hit it!
Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We are early morning on the East Coast here, but I think noon time for Mr. Tony and Mr. Martin Rezard, who's joining us today to discuss some of his work as a sculptor. He does digital sculpting, special makeup effects, amongst a few other things. And Martin's going to join us and discuss some of that. We'll look through some images, and I just wanted to say hello. And Tony, how are you?
Very well, Jason. Yeah. How are you? Okay.
Good.
Good to see you again. Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me. Hi, Martin. Nice to meet you as well. Yeah, really thrilled. Good morning. Yeah, really thrilled to be on the show. Looking forward to it.
And Martin, again, thank you. I know that you had a pretty tight schedule, so we definitely appreciate you taking the time to join us. It means a lot, and we're real excited to talk about some of the stuff that you've worked on, as it goes back quite a ways. And just getting some insight as to how you got into this and your process. So with that being said, since we are going back quite a ways, and I don't want to take any of your story away from you, but one thing that people may not know is you started off as early as the prequel trilogies, working on Jango Fett's armor, some of Queen Amidala's costume and jewelry, things like that. Is that a good place to start? You mind sharing?
Yeah, that was my first involvement with the professional involvement with the Star Wars universe. Yes, indeed.
Okay.
I was living in Sydney at the time, and I had been working on a sci-fi TV show called Farscape, and sculpting for that show. And when I got a call asking if I would be interested in joining the costume props department for Star Wars. So I just said, I'm going to have a think. No, I didn't. It was really good. It's very different sort of set of, it's kind of similar set of skills, but when you build an armor or a piece of jewelry, you're actually building the real thing. When you're building creatures, you're just faking it all the time. It's trying to reproduce skin and movement and articulations when actually we were doing the real thing. It's quite exciting. Nice sort of a change of pace as well. And, meeting George Lucas and the production and just being part of that was just quite mind-blowing to start with. Yeah.
Nice. Now, was this, I would assume this is pretty early on in your career, since we're going back about 20 plus years?
Yeah, well, I started in France in the late 80s, early 90s. I was working for theatre a lot, doing puppets and props and such. But I've always wanted to be part of the cinema world. I've always had this fascination for that world and wanted to work in movies. And I had a very good friend, a very close friend, that we grew up in the same street. It's okay if I tell you stories? You've got time for that?
Yeah. The more the better, for sure.
Yeah, we grew up on the same street, and there was a magazine in France called Mad Movies where you could send your sort of readers letters, and I sent pictures of a makeup I did on my little brother. And this guy called me and said, "Are you doing things with latex and makeup and stuff?" I'm like, "Yeah, because I do that too, and I'm kind of three houses away from you on the same street." So we met up. We were like 17, and we met up, and we did get involved with Super 8 films and messed up each other's parents' garage, and he turned out to be one of the big names in France. Jean-Christophe Spadaccini. He worked on a lot of really big films in France. And I was involved with theater at one stage, and he kept on calling me, going, "Can you come and work with me?" But I had said yes to that company, and they had shows that were touring, and we were building new stuff and fixing old stuff, and I was kind of stuck there. So I couldn't go. And then as soon as there was a lull in the sort of production, then I took off and went work with my friend. And then I married an Australian woman. We're still married, and we decided to try Australia because Fox Studio was opening at the time, and it was quite a fresh sort of adventure. So we took our daughter and our portfolios and just went to Australia. So that's kind of when I started working where I wanted to be, like on Farscape and on films like Komodo and everybody's probably heard of.
I was just going to ask you, Martin, just because I'm of an age where I remember Komodo.
Oh, right.
And I was actually talking to Jason about it just before we went live. Was that your first sort of collaboration with sort of Phil Tippett on that film?
Yeah, met Phil Tippett on that film. Absolutely, I was shaking.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah,
I sculpted the head for that Komodo dragon. I mean, worked on the whole thing, but he came and we were introduced, and I was like, yeah, that was crazy. And then they did a digital version and animated it. That's when I realized that that it was possible. Yeah, it was possible to get to your dreams.
Of course, did that lead then on to, because did some of the guys then work like yourself? Then go on to Jurassic Park? Was that?
No, it didn't kind of lead to anything because I was working at the time when I worked on Komodo. I was working for a guy on the Gold Coast of Australia called John Cox, who got an Oscar for Babe.
Okay.
And I did about a 6 months stint for him. At the time we were doing Komodo, they were doing Pitch Black as well. And other things. Wow. Yeah, it was great. But I didn't stay on the Gold Coast. I just wanted to be in Sydney. And then I got that call for Farscape. I was offered a sculpting position on Farscape, and that it was kind of chaperoned by Henson's, and I was like, yeah, I'm in. Please. Yeah, that was great. So I guess no, there was no direct link from Komodo to the next job, apart from the fact that I worked with people who probably got called and said, "Is that guy okay?" And that's kind of how it works. If you behave like a decent human being, people tend to call you back.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you shared a little bit about how you started off, and actually at a very young age, which I think is what a by chance situation, right? Where the person lives a few doors down. I mean, that's amazing. I mean, it's almost like it was meant to be. It's almost like but one thing that, at least now, taking Star Wars into consideration, we always look back and we see how much the special effects, visual effects, etc. in Star Wars has changed movie making, from there to what we see today. But prior to that, the men like Phil Tippett, John Berg, Dennis Muren, who were involved at the time, were very heavily influenced by movies like Jason and the Argonauts, Clash of the Titans. Did you have any specific movie or series or serial that you watched when you were younger that sort of drove that passion or drove that intrigue to get you to start working with this stuff?
Yeah, I had that passion for all the Ray Harryhausen sort of films, where just the bare fact that his name was he was just the guy making the animation, but they're known as the Ray Harryhausen film, because his involvement in the making of this film was so great. So yeah, as a kid, I kind of loved those, like the old Disney adventure things, like The Island on the Roof of the World. I only know the title in French, so I'm not sure what the real title is. But I think what really triggered me was the Greystoke. When Greystoke came out, and I went to see Greystoke, I was just completely moved by that film, just because it's quite emotionally strong film, but also just to see all those creatures and to see that they can carry the story so well, and that it is possible to turn them into characters that you really care for. That was I remember coming back from that film and sitting in my bedroom going, There's something happening there. And then at that time, it was a very good time for cinema. We had things like Gremlins and Ghostbusters and all this kind of legend, and all these things came coming, and they were rubber fests, and it was like, wow, so good. So I just turned the basement or the garage of the house into a clay and plaster mess, and
Wow.
I was trying to understand how things worked and how to create such things.
So you just figured this all out, like just in real time as you practiced and experimented and.
The resources I had at my disposal at the time were magazines like Cine Fantastique, Cinefx, all these kind of things. This is where I picked up my information. There was some basic makeup books, like three-dimensional makeup by Lee Bagan, and which kind of describe precisely with photographs and technical details how things were done. So the internet wasn't even an idea at the time. So these were my resources, and just trying to work out from my mistakes or our mistakes. And I screwed up a lot of things, and then sat and went, how could I make that work?
Yeah, no, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing. It's amazing too, from the amount of people I've talked to who sort of do something similar to what you do, or do exactly what you do, how much Ray himself, Harryhausen, has had such a significant impact on, that mindset and that intrigue and overall sort of fantasized notion of like, wow, like how is this created? How does this work? And how can I recreate that? It really is amazing, and it makes me wonder, actually, some of the things that we enjoy today as fans of film, how much of that would not exist, or how differently would we be watching it or seeing it if it wasn't for his influence and inspiration. I think things would be a lot different, and it's just really interesting to hear. So I'm gonna just pull up a couple images, and like I said, just no specific order. We'll just sort of bring some stuff up, chat about some of your work, some of the pieces you worked on those pieces specifically, and then we can kind of go from there. So just give me a second to do that.
I was just going to ask you, Martin, while Jason's doing that, are you somebody that sort of takes your work home with you in terms of sort of actually sort of collecting? I noticed you've got a few sort of little pieces behind you, but do you sort of collect or keep your own sculpts, or?
If I can, I do. I like. I've got a small collection of toys. Oh, Babu. I've got toys since I started working on the prequels, and when the figurines came out, I always had that idea I could go to a job interview with a bag full of figurines, going, I've done that one, I've done that one, I've done that one. And it continued on to Doctor Who. I did a little stint on Doctor Who when I got to the UK.
Oh, wow.
And, so the figurines were available. So I've got a self-indulgent shelf at home with some figurine of the kind. But apart from that, I tend not to, as we don't live in a very large house. So I kind of, during lockdown, I started doing dinosaurs and print them.
I did see that, yeah.
Yeah. So when the last lockdown happened, I was on Jurassic Dominion, and I like dinosaurs. So I was given some free time. I went, what am I going to do? I know, dinosaurs. Yeah.
All right. So I think it'd be fun to start off with Babu, because he's such a interesting but lovable little character. And I mean, so in addition to hands-on sculpting, you also do digital sculpting, which is, you know, rendering the image and then actually sculpting it in real time. So how about a little bit of background on Babu himself?
Babu was designed and mainly handled by my good friend Ivan Manzella, who's a crazy genius. Started really young. Like, he sculpted the grandma from the Dinosaurs TV series when he was like 17 or something like that. But this is his baby, and I got involved a little bit as just in the digital side. I sculpted a maquette. No, he sculpted a maquette, but focused on one side of the character. We got that scanned, then I flipped it over in ZBrush and kind of refined it a little bit and posed it a little bit, and that gave us. We printed a kind of display version that was kind of part of the setting process for the concept. So I can't really claim that guy.
Okay. So this right here, I think this is some of the drawings by, was it
Jake?
Jake.
Yeah.
Jake, is it Jake Lund? Am I saying
Yeah,
that correct?
Jake Lunt. Yeah.
Jake Lund. Yep. So this just gives a little bit of insight as to some of his sketches, and then over here where my mouse is, what you've turned into in sculpt form. Correct.
Well, Jake wanted to develop some kind of variations around one design idea. Where can, if those guys were like an actual species, they could come in different shapes and sizes, and they would still be related somehow, like in the animal world. So he's kind of put them in different versions of them, where creeping up everywhere. And this big guy with the yellow shoulders is called the Hola. And this is pretty much all I had, that sketch that you see there, or maybe there was another sketch, but Jake entrusted me to kind of make that real, in a sense. The little sculpt was a monster clay maquette that I produced in the design process. So what we were trying to do, what Neil was running the creature shop on all those Star Wars films, and he wanted to be true to the original feel. So he wasn't willing to. The idea was not to create beautifully sleek aliens like you would have in, say, Men in Black or Star Trek. But if there was like tool marks left, or it was more about storytelling than technical perfections, which is why I kind of brought up the sculpt had that expression already in itself. It wasn't a neutral sculpt. It was, that's what I try and do when it's something that Rob Bottin does a lot. It's just bringing his story into the sculpt already. That's what I kind of aim for. So I did that little guy, and then when that was signed off, then I moved on to the big sculpt head. The head sculpt clay. It was massive. It was a lot of fun. Oh, there's a Babu.
There's another.
Yeah, that's terrific. Yeah, that's a terrific picture. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is more of this was sort of a concept. Babu,
yeah,
correct?
Yeah. There was a when the character was written and described to us, there was 4 designers in the room, in the creature effect department at the time. There was Ivan Manzella, Luke Fisher, Jake Lunt, and myself. And we kind of dispatched when the design was requested. If someone had really a good idea for it, it would run for it. Maybe 2 or 3 would do parallel developments. So I did a couple of versions of Babu, but my versions were not selected. But I enjoyed making them nonetheless. But they were kind of ZBrush models.
I was just going to ask you, Martin, just on the process of actually developing a character. I'm guessing it probably changes from director to director, but do you sit in a room, talk to the director, and he explains what he's after, and then you go away, gives you an idea of what the character's going to be or look like, or does he say, I'm looking for an alien that does X, Y, Z?
Yeah, sometimes the design is coming from, say, the environment the character is living in, or maybe if his size or refers, it's part of the story that he's got to be a certain size, or sometimes sometimes the brief is very wide open and you can do whatever you want, but these are not the best briefs. The best briefs are the ones that have kind of boundaries around them.
Yes.
And it's coming from this sort of universe, and it's living on this very, very cold planet, and it needs to do this and it needs to do that, and it needs to interact or not interact, or when you've got limitations, then suddenly it's more interesting, I think, than just to go, do whatever you want.
So it's almost like they'll explain sort of a personality that they're looking for, and then you can take that away and and
then it's that every there's no rule book. Every director is different. Someone would have a very precise idea. They go, I like this, I like this, I like this. Can you make something out of this? They're all very different. And sometimes there's discussions beforehand, or sometimes time is not there, so there's just briefs, but there's always presentations. As soon as we have something, we kind of bring everybody into the same room and go, ta-da! How do you like this one? How do you like that one?
What I think is interesting about that, when you said, excuse me, when you talked about design and then what gets chosen or selected. Now, we all know at this point where so many things have been shared of behind the scenes movie making, that sometimes a director or a visual team can be very, very specific, as like they might even give a very rough, crude sketch of like, this is what I wanted to make him or her look like, bring this to life. But other times it's, this is the character, like you said, this is the environment which the character lives and interacts in. So what I find intriguing is what each individual sees in their mind's eye. When that environment or those details are being explained to them, it's sort of how you visualize it, or variations of how you visualize it. And then it's sort of connecting that sort of, visual that doesn't exist yet in the real world, and then getting it to be like, yes, that is the one, and that's the one we're going to choose because that fits most with what I was thinking. Or sometimes it can be the complete opposite. Maybe they weren't thinking that, and then you brought that idea from your imagination.
Anything can happen. I mean, for me, the first step of designing is usually doing a bit of research. A bit of research into animalia, into what's been done before, what worked, what didn't work. But real life reference is something I kind of like and crave on, because there's just so many wonderful shapes in the world. You just look at how everything has been evolved to do certain things, and so there's a interesting. There's so many fascinating shapes, and if you take a bit of this, take a bit of that, see how can those two work together, and then you come up with something. Some designers will just draw sketches, really, really, really rough sketches. I personally, I like digital sketches like this one. It's done in ZBrush.
So with something like this, Martin, when you're taking, like you said, ideas from real world elements. Is that something that may have taken place in this instance, or is this just total imagination?
Yeah, well, in this case, I kind of we were working with JJ, and I noticed that I had problems selling my ideas to JJ, and I realized that what he actually likes when he sees an image, because what he sees is an image. If he sees an image that tells a story, it's all that. Then it's gonna. If it's just an alien standing there going, "Hey, look at me, I'm an alien. Do you like me?" That's not really engaging. But if you start putting them in a situation where they're kind of interacting with each other, doing stuff, suddenly it triggers something in the director, and he goes, "Yeah, I think I could put that there. I could put that here, and I could do something with that." And then suddenly we're kind of bouncing off each other's idea, and then that's when it works best in what I've learned. Just trying to come up with a context and a possible story. That's
interesting. So normally one of these guys by themselves, let's say if you made a digital sculpt or even one as far as making a maquette, it's sort of, not all directors, but in JJ's instance, it would be hard to sort of just sell him this particular creature. But if you show them, look, this is how they utilize their, you know, their resources as far as like maybe them sitting and drinking and, you know, showing them in a setting where they are interacting with each other in their environment, I guess it allows him to put the pieces of the puzzle together a little bit better in his mind's eye. Okay.
Yeah, and it's more interesting. It's a lot more interesting.
Yeah. So here's a pretty cool character here. Reminds me a little bit of Reese from Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
Now, was Reese an inspiration for this particular guy here, or?
Yeah, well, I was trying to fit into the Star Wars sort of visual language, if you will, and there's Reese had four eyes, didn't he? It's something I did. I just started adding more eyes and putting a nice face in the middle. And then on the following film, I did one with 20 eyes, and they were all going, "Where are you going to stop?" But yeah, that's a concept that was luckily picked up by the director.
Nice.
That was on Solo, and then I did the sculpt. It got molded, and then it went to the Makeys. This one was for Solo as well. And when it was mechanized, 6 eyes, it was incredible. It was absolutely incredible, because the two guys who Gustav Hogan did the mech, and Matt Denton did the programming of the motors, and he put like a gyroscopic thing in the head. So if you held the head like that, with nobody controlling anything, you just held it and just turn it to the right, the eyes would just turn and delay, and it would just have this kind of natural motion to it, looking up, looking down. It was incredible.
It's kind of creepy. It's kind of freaky, huh? It's almost like he's alive. He's real.
It was absolutely beautiful.
Do you have conversations, Martin, then with the animatronics team then when you're developing a sculpt and just to see what they can and can't do? Because obviously you can go one direction and they'll say, well, I can make that work, or I can't make that work. So there sounds like there's a collaboration there between yourself and the animatronic side.
Yeah, well, and it's more than just the technicians, the mechies. It's everybody's playing a part. The mold makers, the people who run the foams, the people who will finish an artwork, and I try, and all the fabrication side of things as well. Which is fabrication is kind of the dark matter of creature effects. There's a lot of it, but nobody really sees it, because it's keeping everything together, making the characters easy to get in and out of, easy to clean, and it's a very very work heavy department, fabrication, and you never really, they never get the recognition that they deserve. But I tend to I find it incredibly useful to consult with everybody along the way in the process of building something, even designing.
So moving forward on that particular, like, I guess like segueing into like what you were just saying, Martin. So in a situation like this with the Corellian hounds, correct? Well, this is more of 6 eyes.
Yeah, that's his.
Sorry about the images, guys. So this is where he's sort of coming to life.
Yep. Yeah, that's the clay sculpt.
So one thing I want to ask, I guess it relates both to 6 eyes and the Corellian hound. So once you have an idea that is pretty much solidified, both in your mind and the director's mind, is it one of those things where, depending on whether or not they can make it work in real time, to act naturally, look naturally, that maybe some revisions have to be made? Or is it one of those things where the character looks fantastic, this is how we want him to look, and by hook or by crook, we'll get it to operate and interact the way we need it to? Or is it working together to sort of, like, for example, 6 eyes seems pretty complicated because the eyes have to be natural. You can't have one eye looking over here, one eye over there blinking. They all have to sort of act in tandem in a very natural, natural way, any species would. So is that something that may affect the design of something?
It's a good policy to try and design things that are feasible in any, either as a makeup or as a puppet or as a suit. We try and work with around the possibilities of that's going to be doable. So for the dogs, for the Corellian hounds, for example, we knew that we would have to dress up dogs, and I was lucky enough when that idea of character came. I was lucky enough there was two of the designers were off on holiday on that week. So when somebody, I went, I'll do that. So I did. I looked for a lot of photographs of dog in different poses, and then just sketched around them and colored them. And that red one was kind of the first one they picked on. They went, it was something like that. So from there, I did more. This one was.
It's more like an alligator. Yeah.
This one was called Rex.
Oh, okay.
But a bit dinosaur-like. Just trying different things.
So this is again another example of taking real-world species and implementing that into some of the design. Okay. This guy's interesting. He kind of looks like a lion meets a warthog type of. Is this kind of just an amalgamation of different species?
Yeah, weird stuff.
Yeah.
But that's the thing with Star Wars, is that a lot of the elements, even like homes or technical things or objects or props, they're kind of recognizable in a way. You go, I kind of, it's a visual language that's strongly embedded in our living habits in our world, and it's just used differently. So
now when you are trying to follow a visual language in a specific movie, I know, and we can talk about some of the other ones a little bit further, but you've done some stuff for Prometheus, quite a bit of stuff for Prometheus, even some stuff for Game of Thrones, the White Walkers, as you've seen us go through those images. So when you're following those elements to sort of keep continuity, do you feel in Star Wars specifically, where you've done some Rogue One, you've done prequels, you've done Solo, The Force Awakens, so on and so forth, do you feel that makes it a little bit more difficult, or do you feel that sort of helps with creative liberties to sort of be a little bit more open and broad, but just sort of single in on various points and elements just to keep that feel, or do you think that it sort of confines your imagination to only looking in one direction?
No, it's quite a tricky part of the design phase to kind of try and lock into would that character work in the Star Wars universe. The aliens that you see in Star Trek, they won't necessarily feel like they belong in the Star Wars universe, and vice versa. It's a hard thing to define. It's a really tricky thing to define. And sometimes I got it, sometimes I didn't. When you spend a lot of time designing, there's the ratio of selected successful design is not that great. You spend a lot of time doing things that don't work, and you go, and there's lots of days where you go, am I really made for that?
I was going to ask. Sorry, Martin. So I was just going to ask you just about timescales with these types of. I mean, obviously, working on a Star Wars project is, is, I guess, the pinnacle of most people's careers. But when you're actually working in that environment as a creator, you're obviously under, I guess, tight. Not only having to come up with a design, but also I guess you're working under tight time frames as well.
Yeah.
Do you feel that sort of pressure, or do you just?
Yeah, absolutely. And everything has to fit into a budget and a schedule. Lucky for us, on films such as Star Wars, they have the means to allow for long developments. So you can try different things, and because sometimes it's part of the creative process of the director to be able to go around and around and around and go, yeah, I like this one, but maybe there's another version that we haven't seen yet that's going to be better. And when they are given that financial possibility, it's quite good for them. It's very different. I mean, I'm currently working on TV series. It's different budget, different production, and you can really feel it. It's like, oh, okay, we've got to hit it right the first time, you know. Yeah.
So on characters like this, Martin, when you're sort of just jotting down ideas and sort of figuring out what's what, or you're working with another artist who, you know, is visually coming up with what he foresees might fit or might work, do you find it easier when you're the one starting from scratch with, you know, the rough draft of a sketch, the digital sketch and the sculpt, or do you think, you know, any one of these characters moving from somebody else's work into your work, you know, I just feel like listening to some of what you're saying, it sounds like such a complicated process. You know, we can sit back and take for granted what we see. I can look at this and say, okay, well, this is somebody who's extremely talented in sculpting. But like you said, it goes so far beyond that. It goes, will this work in the environment? Will it fit in the environment? Will it make sense visually? Will it feel natural? It's kind of like, you know, seeing a polar bear in the Amazon. You know, we know instantly that that doesn't work because it's not work. You know, this does not belong here. So taking all these extra elements, you know, into consideration, I mean, I don't know. How do you feel that that affects the end product? As you know, for example, just like a piece like this, as I go through, from beginning to end, like this guy initially, you know, just a little backstory on him. If I remember correctly, he's the one that had the big yellow backpack.
No, that's a different one. This one was in Maz's castle. It's like a. I've always called him the priest, but there's something a bit creepy about him. But I wanted to do something that was not unlike the original cantina scene where there's that hammerhead guy, and I really like that shape of the hammerhead because it's kind of very unusual sort of way to create the structure of a face, of a head, and so. I kind of was inspired by this a little bit. So it's one of the early designs I did on Force Awakens, and at first it was something else. There was this kind of thing on this kind of shape on top, but it was in some kind of a mechanical spidery thing, which was completely impossible to build. So I simplified it, and then he picked up being simplified and being more feasible. He was selected as part of Maz's Castle sort of menagerie, and I knew that I could fit someone's head in there, and I knew that I could. It was possible to fabricate that costume around a human shape, and have the arms to be puppeteered and the arms of the performer to be inside the costume. So that there was. I had a plan on to how it could come to life, if you will.
It's amazing how many different elements have to be considered when you are working on these things. It makes me curious, you know, when you're dealing with new people coming into the industry who do have talents, whether they're digital sculptors, they're real life sculptors that use, you know, various elements to make, you know, different shapes. Is this something that they're aware of when they're coming into it, that, okay, this has to function properly? Somebody may even have to be, you know, physically fit to adorn this costume all day. Is it going to work physically and look proper once it's on the body? Because just because somebody can fit inside it or a dog can fit inside it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work to their physical attributes. It might limit them in acting naturally, correct? So is that something that, you know, you find that people are not always aware of when coming into, you know, the film industry?
It's a very complex process, and it's there's a lot to grasp. So the best way to learn it is to be part of it, and then you discover things and you fail and you try again. And it's rare to have someone who starts, a young person would start and have all that knowledge. But if they have as long as they have the energy and the passion, and they're sort of looked after in their process, then it's fantastic. And performers are really important as well. Earlier on, you had a picture of that guy with a big turtle head. I can't remember his name.
We can jump back real quick.
No.
This gentleman.
Yeah.
He was also part of Mos Cannabis setup.
Yeah. And he was designed by Luke Fisher, who's a very prolific, very talented artist. And I took his design and sculpted and added some details. And the performer was Scott Richardson, who was an amputee. He was missing a leg. And we used a lot of people with specific body shapes because it allows you to push the design beyond the regular expected human body shape. Like we had another performer who was missing both legs below the knee. He's passed away now. But that allowed us to have just really spindly designs, just very strict things that you couldn't create around a normal person, or normal, just not as in an expected body shape. But so
amazing stuff. So this, what you were just talking about as far as body shapes and whatnot. So this particular character here, I remember seeing an image of the gentleman who wore this, and his face, this may come across the wrong way, but he had sort of a face that had a similar attribute and features.
He's got a very long neck and he's got we use Peter a lot because of his incredible neck, and whatever you do on him, you just go, how did you guys do that? Can't tell.
It's interesting how that does make a difference in how time will not work.
It's huge. If you start with the right performer, and we tend to use the same performers again and again, because once we know that they're strong, they're resilient, and that they're that's the big guy.
So I just wanted to pull this up.
Yeah, when we know that we can work together, it's just so much easier. It's just the same with technicians and other artists. We tend to kind of stay together because we don't have to build a new relationship every time. We know how each other works. We know where their strengths are, it's just easier to produce something with a.
That's absolutely amazing. Because it's a whole. I mean, there's so many different relationships taking place on so many different levels at one time. Between the visual, the director, the actor, actress participating and wearing that costume, and this is just phenomenal.
It's huge, and it's really once you find someone that you like to work with, you like to work for. I really like working for Neil because he's always looking for solutions. Whenever there's a problem, he's never looking for a culprit. He's looking for a way out, for a way to fix what happened. And I find that incredibly positive as an attitude. It just a lot of the things we make. It's all about problem solving. Okay, there are a couple of things that are similar in the way they're built that we've done before, but every build is a new build, and every presents a new set of problems. So it's a lot about problem solving and kind of finding ways around things.
What medium do you prefer to work in, Martin? There's obviously a digital side to this, and then there's a physical sculpting. I always get the impression the physical stuff is the fun part.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just wondered what your take on. Yeah.
There's personally, I find designing extremely stressful because you some things you're at the start and some things expected, and it's not unusual for somebody to say, "Can you what I would like it is that if it was really iconic, and just go, oh. So it's quite intense, but when you get to the sculpting part, it's like, well, hey, it's like a holiday, you know. It's like, I know where I'm going. I know where I'm going. I know how to do that. And it's physical and it's kind of cathartic. You can listen to audiobooks. You know, it's like, hey, it's okay.
Do you think going forward then in years' time? What worries me is it going to go more and more digital? You know, VR, 3D printing, and do you think more of these old school skills which you've learned? You obviously do both, but I think
that's just it took me a while, but I've embraced the digital tools, and I think that they're extremely valuable. Extremely valuable. You can develop. There's a process we followed recently where we started being characters for a film by doing really crude maquettes, really quick maquettes, totally unrefined, just focusing on character and proportions and shapes and all these kind of things. And we do one, do another. And when we start to get somewhere, so they're physical, they exist, they're there. When we start, and they're posed very often, when we start to get somewhere that's interesting, then we scan those, we bring them into ZBrush, and we kind of clean them up. And then another level can be added. We can get into more details. We can change the proportions more radically. But it's kind of the best of both worlds in a way. And then you can start printing things. And when you have a print in your hands, you go, this is wrong. But you don't really necessarily see it on the screen. Once you've got it in your hand, it's like really useful. And then if a big sculpt has to be produced out of that, you can print the small version of it. And when you have to do the big sculpt and you have the small shape in your hands, it's so much easier to understand the logic of what connects where and how it works, rather than having 2D images only, you know. So personally, I really enjoy using 3D technology, and we have a model maker at the moment who does droids and masks, and he gets his things printed, and it's just absolutely incredible what he does. Absolutely incredible.
It's amazing listening to you share, Martin, as you've adapted from early on to today's technologies, and being able to sort of be skillful in implementing all of those. Now, looking at this image, this is another image of the gentleman that you called the priest from Ascanana. So this is him, I would say, near completion or pretty much complete. Now, is this normal practice to have somebody who's involved in either the digital sculpt stage, the sculpting stage, to actually work with applying it, or is this more where you do a little bit of?
I ask for it.
Okay. Okay.
Because I really like it's the best thing once you've designed it, sculpted it, followed the fabrication side of it. There's those two ladies on the right-hand side of the screen. They were the fabricators, Tara and I can't remember her name. Tara in the background did handle the fabrication on Praster Element, and Andy at the back was the Meki. So this is us on set, touching up the character between takes to make sure that everything's okay. And I asked if I could be on set, and I was given a remote control to make his face move as well. It's like,
oh, that's fantastic. So here he is being dressed again.
Yeah.
So that being part of the process all the way through must be really
it's extremely
magnificent thing. Yeah, it's going to be extraordinary. Plus, you're seeing something really come to life. What is that? Just out of curiosity, this is more of a personal question. What does that feel like when you see a creation that sort of existed just in your imagination come to life and may potentially lead to being a character that people enjoy or respond to or have a visceral reaction to? Is that something that you sort of get used to, or is it each time that happens you just have that sort of overwhelming feeling of joy?
No, it's truly incredible. It is truly incredible, and it's like especially, I mean, for me, because there's some, I'm probably very naive, but there's something very magic about a film set for me. Even just having all those people being able to work together with rules that are not always very clear, but will have to be adhered to scrupulously. And there's something about when it is being recorded. I just find that fascinating. So it's always been magic to me, and it still is, even at my great age. So yeah, being able, it's an incredible pride that you feel when you're there, and you can see that people are enjoying watching it move, and they go, "How did you guys do that?" And it's very simple pleasure.
Here's another question I had, and again, these are just more curiosities as you share more about your process. But so, if for people who aren't familiar, I think the best way to get it across, Luke Fisher was one who either designed or was at least a large part of designing the what we know as the melted Vader helmet. The sort of
yes, that's correct. Yes, yeah.
So I think that's the best way to get people to be aware of who Luke is. But when you're working on something like this, originally being Luke's design, and then you bring it to life, what is it like when you see this as these two gentlemen here were a 2-pack of action figures. What is it like when you walk into a store and you see your creation as an action figure? That's that's going to be like, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely magic. It's fantastic. I should add that Luke Fisher is also responsible for K2SO.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. It's his baby. It's totally his baby.
So that goes to that's a character that so many people love and respond to, and he's sort of a modern day R2, so to speak, where he's got his own personality and his own humor, and Alan brought him to life in a great way, but still, even aesthetically, the visual looks of K2 are very well revered. So that's going to be amazing to see.
It's a design masterpiece, absolute design masterpiece. And this guy you've got on screen, this one was designed by Ivan Manzella, and I just handled the sculpting of it, and it was performed by none other than Warwick Davis.
Oh wow!
Really? That's Warwick. Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
It's amazing how the roots is so solidified and some of these things. It's great stuff. So I just want to jump back here a little bit. Sorry about the pictures, guys. So as we go through this guy here, I always found he's another one that I actually bought as an action figure because I thought he looked really, really cool. Now, who did the original design on this from inception?
That was one of my designs. We were asked to produce variations around sand people.
Oh, so that was
okay.
Wow. Okay. It has that feel, but sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. But it definitely has that feel. But I didn't. Okay.
For a very, very dry planet, or that was the kind of the idea, and then it run to something else and to something else. So I did a whole bunch of little ZBrush heads, which I very quickly rendered and then just sketched around them. And this one I did about 20 of them, different, with horns at the top, horns on the bottom, inverted masks and stuff. And this one was picked up, and it was, strangely enough, I didn't sculpt that one. Luke Fisher sculpted it for me.
Okay, so sort of the opposite. This one was your design, Luke sculpted, versus Luke with design. Interesting. Yeah, he's a fantastic looking character, and I maybe subconsciously that was drawing me in, sort of that the sand people. Seeing that's, and I can see more, like you said, dry planet's got that crustacean sort of look to it, that element to it. So I'm just gonna jot through some of these and just touch upon just a little bit.
This is one of my favorite. This is one of my favorite characters from the modern films.
I think he's a fan favorite among many.
Love it.
Yeah, it's all right if you like that sort of thing. No, it's fantastic. This one was really great. It was kind of this was for Rogue One, and what's his name again? Our director, Gareth. Gareth was really wanted something. He wanted. I didn't get it at first. we knew it had to be some sort of Mon Calamari sort of a thing. So I started with a regular sort of Mon Calamari face and just try and aged it and built it up. And I couldn't see where he wanted to go, so we just gave him some plasticine, and he just went prunk, 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 like really big, and he said more like Churchill, like really grumpy, like you imagine is Akbar's cousin, but it's the cousin you don't want to be sitting next to at the table because he's just smelly and grumpy.
the guy who's eating the food and it's all over his beard. Yeah. But he's got a little bit of an older, sort of wiser, but look to him, but not the quiet type. Somebody who's a little bit more outspoken and gives that sort of emphatic
and characterful. That was the thing, and that's what we tried to. That's what I really like about this one. And Gustav Hogan once again did the mechs for this one, and to see it move, most of what you see, like I would say about 85 to 90% of what you see on screen in the film is just the animatronic. There has been some little enhancements where they needed something that the animatronic couldn't perform, but all the talking, the blinking, all of that is just it's what you could see that happening on set.
That's great to know, because I think at least in today's world we're just under the assumption that everything is now CGI, which it's nice to know that there's a lot more real world practical effects. Now these guys in the back with the lighter skin hair, were those sort of just, hey, we need some extra characters of Mon Calamari, we're just going to throw them in, like a sort of rough draft that sort of our work in progress that sort of stopped in between? Because I know we have a couple images right here.
We call those the Milky Bars.
Milky Bars, okay.
Radis's name when we were building him was Black Bar, because he was always very dark. And the one that appears in the last film, we called him Mini Bar.
I love these sort of out of the box side names as you're creating them, because even going back to some of the earlier movies, even within Star Wars or outside of Star Wars, the creators always have, it's Devil Guy or Alien Man or Green. There's never an official name quite, and then it's like one of those things where even if an official name has been applied, you always see him as the name that you attached.
Like the species we saw before, the ones with the little tendrils there, like the howler, the big guy. Every single one of those characters, every variations of that character, is their on-screen name is Beastie Boys song title.
Really, I love that. Who came up with that?
I think that was JJ, or either JJ or the writer.
That has to be one of the best fun facts I've heard today. I'm a huge Beastie Boys fan, that's why. I love that.
I couldn't give them to you right now, but if you do a bit of research, that was the clay sculpt.
So this one going here is so this is him in clay form.
Yeah, that's the big sculpt.
So he kind of has a little bit of I wouldn't necessarily say a little bit of a hammerhead look almost, but not quite. Well, we're trying. The position we were finding ourselves in on The Force Awakens, we were really, really trying to get back to the original trilogy. The feel, we were trying to jump over the prequel and just get back to what made Star Wars as much as possible. So we kind of shamelessly tried to stick to that look as much as possible. The paintwork on this one is amazing. It's like I think we studied. We had a book about elephants with really close-up pictures of elephant skin details, and Henrik Svensson, who handles most of the painting work, did a superb work on that one.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and this is one of the first characters we were sort of teased with or introduced to on Celebration. He walked across the stage, correct?
No, that was different. The one that walked across the stage was a design by Jake. Designed by Jake, who was carrying boxes on his back, And
That's right. He had the net. Okay, that's correct. Okay.
Yeah, the character was the performer was actually, it was like a little. Yeah. He looked like a weird sort of camel thing, and he was carrying boxes on his back like that, and the performer was actually in the boxes and puppeteering the head.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow,
yeah.
that's magnificent.
The highest box had some kind of a creature that looked a lot like the one that's hiding under the rock when you see Jabba's castle and his tongue comes out and he grabs something in Return of the Jedi. And so it was kind of, that's where the performer's eyes could see through the mouth of that huge creature in the top cage.
See, that's really interesting. Working all those elements as to how that would work, because no one would be the wiser. I would have never known that that's how that was. There's actually some curiosity there as to how that was happening. Now, not to put too much of a strong focus on this guy here, but what was the idea behind making him sort of part man, part machine?
I've got no idea.
It was just an idea that was put out there.
As that was Jake's design. He thought that would look cool. The performer was the performer inside that character is Ian White, who performed the giant in Game of Thrones, and the Predator in Alien vs Predator.
Now, speaking of Game of Thrones, as you mentioned, you've done some work on Game of Thrones, another amazing fan favorite. Now, I see here, is this a digital render of the White Walker?
I did some. I did a couple of weeks of design development on the White Walkers at the start of season 2 of Game of Thrones. That was under the prosthetic supervisor at the time was Connor O'Sullivan, who worked also on Prometheus. He did the engineer suit on Ian White once again in Prometheus. So he asked me if I could do some design research on White Walkers. So I spent a couple of weeks doing different things under his supervision, and then once we nailed down the design, I sculpted the face prosthetics, and Colin Shelver sculpted the body and the hands, I think. So yeah, that was the extent of my involvement on that one.
I see. Now, I do know, I think initially there were 2 different actors. I don't know if it was between the White Walkers and the Night King, but is this another situation where working on the design was also implemented into, because I think the gentleman who wore the, I don't know if it was the full suit or the mask, but he had sort of a unique shape to his face as well. So was that another one of those situations where it was
I think it was. I think it's the White King. Gregor was the performer, I think, but I wasn't involved with that one. But yeah, he had quite a strong face to start with, and it's always, if you start when you're doing makeup effects, if you start with someone with a really strong, charismatic, interestingly shaped face, you're halfway there already.
Yeah, it's. I gotta say, we do a lot of these, Martin. Me and you have talked a few times outside of this, and we've had the pleasure of talking to a lot of amazing creators, but I think we got a little bit more deeper insight as to how much really goes into the process. We tend to focus, not specifically, but just the conversation tends to just fall on, okay, this is where the idea came from and this is how we executed it. And you don't get to see a lot of the steps in between, whether it's the idea from inception, working with the different people of, all the different moving parts and collaborative efforts that have to come together. And some of these characters we're only seeing for a split second, like blink and you miss it type thing.
I know.
And so much time is being put into just that alone. So yeah, I mean, sharing that has been really interesting, and I think even as you were talking about it, just had me thinking like, wow, all these things again that we just see and take for granted. You don't stop to put into thought how much is really happening, but behind that. So I got to say, it really is amazing. Whenever I get to meet and talk with somebody like you, I always walk away with a much bigger appreciation not only for the work itself, but even the characters that I feel like I've grown to love and enjoy and appreciate. I tend to look at that character differently. Tony had mentioned specifically like Radis he's become sort of a fan favorite. I think that it's not only a nod back to Akbar, but also he's developed his sort of own sort of cult following, and he's just a great looking character and a fun character. Just curious, do you have any specific characters yourself that you find, that you have an affinity to, sort of a connection to, that you like more than another once it's like finished and completed?
I was really Radis is one of my favorite, and especially because he got some screen time, and as you said, it doesn't happen very often, especially on a lot of what we do for the films is sometimes textural. It's texture in the background. If you think about the Maz's castle, it's practically this one shot, and you've got those characters popping in and out, and there's about a year's worth of work there, and it's just a layering thing. So whenever any character has a bit of attention given to him on screen, that's a plus, because we've all put so much in creating something that we try to make as convincing and as believable as possible. It's good to see that some people can see it and enjoy it. That's the main thing for me. When I saw the first episode of The Mandalorian, it made me really angry, because I went, don't get me wrong, I love Mandalorian. It looks amazing, and everything is used. You can see that the sandcrawler that we've all loved as kids, suddenly it becomes the centerpiece for a chase, and it's like crawling all over it and jumping. So you can see where the money went on Mandalorian, because you've got the props, you've got the costumes, you've got the makeups, they're all there. And I was thinking about the last film, and it's like, where's everything we made?
I wanted to ask you, Martin, because I'll probably never get a chance. Just going back to the prequels, Revenge of the Sith particularly, talking of iconic characters, you worked on the Darth Vader suit. Obviously he's a massive character in the Star Wars universe. How did that feel when you were actually...
That was scary.
Yeah.
Was scary. One day I was given the task to measure and reference something's coming. You're going to take some pictures and measure it, and just so that the one we make is as close as possible as to the one has been made before. And I opened the box, and it was the reveal mask from Return of the Jedi, the one that he takes off. And I was like, it was. That was incredible. It's just you're just on cloud nine when you're working on, and at the same time you're just focusing on what you do and how you do it and how best to do it, and make sure that you don't break it and stuff. And it's incredible. It's an incredible feeling. Incredible.
Because were you actually on set when they filmed the suit?
I went to see. I was invited to pop in and see Vader in his scene, and there's I think the best on set experience for me, if we're getting there, is on The Rise of Skywalker. I was involved in Palpatine's makeup.
Yeah, I was gonna bring that up, because I'm a huge McQuarrie fan, and I love how they implemented the old McQuarrie thrown into that. But go ahead, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's so we did a lot of research and development, because there was a lot of uncertainty as to what it would look like, and so I did some designs for the contraption that is traveling into, and like the kind of crane thing. And then I sculpted the makeup as well, and applied the makeup with Lucy Sibic, who won an Oscar for The Darkest Hour.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So we were doing that makeup together, and then there was the early stage when he was really not quite like the Emperor, and then the second stage where he's like fully grown Emperor with the bright eyes and everything. And when we were shooting that on that set, on that chair, as you said, the Macquarie sketch that it was based on, and just looking at that, looking at how good it looked and how successful we had been into recreating that character, and JJ was there, and I was looking at that going, doesn't get any better than that, does it? And then in walks Spike Lee. He was in London at the time.
Right.
To receive a
Hey,
BAFTA.
hey Spike, how you doing?
He was in London at the time to receive a BAFTA for the Black Klansman. I was like, okay, it does get cooler than that. That's incredible.
That's amazing. I can tell by the smile on your face. It's one of those things where it seems that you have so much joy for doing what you do, and I talk to a lot of creators who it's this odd thing that obviously it's a great way to make a living. You can't deny that, but it's almost one of those things where they all say, even if they weren't getting paid, they love doing it so much that they would still do it. You almost it's almost like innate, like you can't help but do that because you have so much love and passion for it. Yeah,
that and the fact that I wouldn't have any idea how to do anything else.
Yeah, I mean, even better.
But yeah, it is always a pleasure to kind of go through the process again and try design ideas and listen to what people have to say and see what comments they make on what you do, and then just push it forward and just try different avenues and try and solve things. Yeah, it is wrong. It is work, and sometimes it's a bit painful, but it's all in all, in the big picture is I always feel very, very lucky that I had that little bit of something that I could offer to the passion that I had, and I had it in me to work and work and work and make that work. And it's I always considered myself extremely lucky to be able to do what I do. Yeah.
Well, it's truly amazing, and I had jumped off for just a second, but I heard the story of how when you're working on Vader's costume heavy Return of the Jedi reveal. I can't imagine what that's kind of like such a wow moment, but then like I don't want to drop it and break it. Like, what do I do?
Yeah, just go, this thing is worth more than what I'm gonna make in the 3 years.
That's great stuff.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things that we all are, both me and Tony, is not only fans, but we're collectors, and that's why we have such a intrigue into some of these things and learning about it. And I think that some of the characters that I mentioned, we really take to and really love. That there's a lot of fans who enjoy these characters so much that they sort of remake them and to have them on display in their collections. And I think Tony had a question that I thought was interesting that you may be able to better answer for him.
Yeah, it was. I know a lot of collectors probably watching now collect the sort of foam latex creature masks, and it was something I was really interested in. It was actually Radis I was looking at, and you hear stories of the deterioration of the latex over time, and I just wondered, as an artist that works with the material, whether you had any sort of techniques for maybe maintaining masks or.
No, foam latex is porous by nature, and it will deteriorate in time. Especially if it's been used on set, it's been banged about a bit. I know there's a guy in France who has a marvelous museum in a ville called Lyon. It's called the Miniature Museum, and I went to see him. Dan Holman is his name. Dan Holman. Look him up, and he gets a lot of movie artifacts and fixes them. And he's come up with a recipe, which is kind of silicon based, I believe, that he injects into the foam, and that kind of. I don't have all the details about it, but that's his way of going around that issue.
Oh, okay.
Silicon pieces will be a lot more resilient because it doesn't crumble. It just unless it rips, it's quite strong stuff. But foam latex, it's in its nature because it's light and fluffy. There's a moment when it falls apart. Sorry.
Now, Martin, do you? I see just a few little fun pieces behind you, but do you, as a creator, collect anything? Just as a fan of other people's work, your artwork, do you have just pick up a few keepsakes, mementos?
Well, most of the things we do are they're not really up for grabs. They're just property of Lucasfilm, so they kind of go away in boxes after the end of the film.
How about when you see like an action figure or something that you worked on? Do you grab one of it?
I like those. I was a big fan of the early McFarlane when they came out.
Nice.
In the 90s, and I had a few of those. Really beautiful stuff. And then I moved town, and then I moved country, and then I moved continent, and then I had to lighten up the load a little bit. But I have a couple of I've got a couple of wobbly heads.
Yeah.
And actually, this one's been signed by Ray Park, and this one's been signed by Ian. Performer of the Emperor.
Oh, McDermott. Okay.
McDermott.
Yeah, I always find that very interesting that a lot of creators don't tend to collect a lot of things. Like you said, some of it is for the reason that you have to relinquish it; it's not your property. But also, just when it is recreated commercially, I think one of the answers I had gotten one time, hearing Phil Tippett talk, was you look at it so much, it's at the point where you're almost sick of it. I've seen it so many times.
There is a bit of that. There is a little bit of that. And plus, there's also another reality is that I don't live alone in this house, and I have to accommodate for everybody's taste. So I can't have as much display as I would really like to have if I was still a bachelor, but I'm not.
So before we get ready to sign off, I just wanted to ask if it's okay to share, but is there anything that you're currently working on that you might want to talk about?
The last big film I was involved with was Jurassic World Dominion.
Okay.
Which release has been pushed back to June 2022, but that was an amazing experience. Absolutely mind-blowing, truly mind-blowing. I can't wait for everybody to see it. I can't wait to see it myself. And recently we're just working on more streaming content. So I'm back working for Neil Scanlon again. We've done Andor, which is Star Wars TV series, and we're currently doing Willow.
Oh wow! And Neil's somebody that you were working with very early on, right?
Yeah, I worked with Neil first on Prometheus.
Okay.
Yeah. And then when he got the Force Awakens, he called me back and asked me if I wanted to join him, and I went, yes, please.
And then I think I'll skip that. Yeah, all right. Now, just for those who are currently watching and those who will be watching, anywhere that people can find, additional work, or I'll go ahead and share your website below, which I was able to get some amazing images, but anywhere where they can.
There's there's my website, martinrezard.com. I'm on Instagram as well, which has some work. It's because I'm involved with really big projects. It's difficult to sometimes it's not always possible to share what I do.
A lot of NDAs and things like that.
Yeah. And I don't have as much time as I would like to produce my own artwork. As I was saying, I did a bunch of dinosaurs during the first lockdown and printed a few, and that's the kind of stuff that I like to do. Yeah, I think there's pictures of them on my Instagram, so if you dig a bit, you'll find a link somewhere.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where whenever we have a new creator on and we speak to them, especially when there's so much more to what they do that we're unfamiliar with, it just really opens up that world of curiosity. And you know, like I had, even though we had been talking back and forth for a while, I just recently learned that, you know, some of the Queen Amidala and even Jango Fett stuff that you were involved in was sort of a surprise to me. I was like, wow, okay, that's really interesting that it goes back that way to the prequels. So yeah, it brought a little bit of a smile to my face to see how many elements. But yeah, I just want to thank you for your time, Tony.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
it's nice to meet you, Martin.
Hyperdrive. Thank you for your time, Tony.
Thank you very much thank you for inviting me back on. It was a pleasure. It was nice to meet you, Martin, as well. Really
nice to meet you too,
yeah.
Guys.
Yeah, it's a fantastic talk. All right, thank you, everybody. Martin, just stay with us for a second as we end the broadcast. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I know it's a bit early here on the East Coast, but we try to accommodate everybody's time frame. And yeah, that's it. Thank you again to Martin. Thank you again to Tony, and we will see you guys again soon.
Thank you, guys. That was great.